All right, so the Cavs have officially lost Ty Jerome, or at least they did last night. He signed officially with the Memphis Grizzlies, and there's been a lot of conversation, right? Some people are happy that the Cavs have let Ty Jerome walk. Some people have been very upset at the Cavs for letting Ty Jerome walk. I don't know which one of those camps will be proven to be true. I tend to think Ty Jerome is a pretty impactful player to this Cavs team. There is an angle of this that I don't think nearly enough people have had a conversation around, which is right now, every single conversation being had about Ty Jerome is under the assumption that Ty was willing to come back to Cleveland for the same money as Sam Merrill. And the reason that assumption exists is because he signed with the Memphis Grizzlies for a similar amount of money. I would pose that it's not that simple, and that part of what might have happened here for Cleveland is that they pissed Ty Jerome off with how they handled him in the final game of the postseason. I think that has to be factored in to any conversation we're going to have. I'm not going to wait for the Ty Jerome podcast in 6 months where he brings that up and then people start thinking about it to have the conversation, right? Or to get permission to have the conversation. I think that's a big part of it, and you're allowed to speculate on it based on everything that we saw. Because as much as there didn't seem to be much energy for the Cavs to bring back Ty, it didn't seem like there was much energy from Ty to come back to Cleveland. And I wonder at some point, did they realize both sides, or at least one of these sides, did not want to come back together? And I'm willing to bet it was more than likely Ty Jerome who wasn't willing to come back to Cleveland, not because he didn't like Cleveland, but because he got played at the final game of the season. Now, some people might hear that and hope that's not the case, or think that Ty Jerome is above all of this or anything else. I want y'all to remember that these guys are athletes. And when I say these guys are athletes, I mean these guys are competitors. There is no justification to somebody who has competed at a high level to being benched. You can justify it with all the reason in the world for why a player needs to be benched. I've heard every justification for why Ty Jerome needed to be benched in that Pacers series. He was bad. He was the worst player on the floor in the Pacers series. But the reality is, Ty Jerome was a core piece of this team, a core reason for this team's success. He was a 6th Man of the Year candidate, and he's not somebody you bench because you have a couple of bad shooting splits with. Ty Jerome spent months building the reputation that got him to the point to where he was in the rotation in Cleveland and a point of importance in Cleveland. You cannot allow 3 games to erase that. And what Kenny Atkinson did was allow 3 games to erase that. I understand in the postseason there's always going to be pressure to be reactionary, but you can't be ultra reactionary in the playoffs. And benching your 6-man award winner for Craig Porter Jr. in the final game of the season, I thought was one of the more underrated poor coaching decisions that Kenny Atkinson made. And I think that decision we will find out played a role in what happened with Ty Jerome and why the Cavs could not keep Ty Jerome. Now, if you think I'm wrong on this, tell me, does this sound unrealistic? Does this sound like it's impossible? Like you think Ty Jerome got benched and was thrilled about it? Go back and watch Ty Jerome on the bench in Game 5 and see if that looks like a man who's thrilled and understands the consequence of playing a couple of bad games in the playoffs. Like, really, look at him. No player, by the way, would be happy to be benched in that scenario. You can name me any of your favorite players that you think would handle it with maturity or whatever you want to put on them. Nobody would handle that well. That's not something anybody handles well. You in the audience, maybe you got benched on your team in high school or middle school or AAU, wherever it was. I bet you look like Ty Jerome and you're pretty furious. Because if you played really well and then you got benched because you had a couple bad moments, you're going to feel cheated. I know people that didn't even play high-level basketball that are still upset about benchings that happened to them when they were in high school. Okay? They're 30 years old now. So to act like this is an impossible thing to have happened, I think is kind of ridiculous. And the fact that nobody has even thought to ask the question, hey, did Kenny kind of like screw up massively on this? And look, I understand Kenny has had a great year and we're in give Kenny his flowers mode. And I'm not trying to get Kenny ran out of town or anything like that. But I do try to be fair. If I like a coach, I'm going to also criticize a coach. And I like Kenny as a coach. I think Kenny does a lot of great things. And when Kenny does great things, I am not shy of singing his praises. But I think the move he made with Ty Jerome was a very costly one and a move he absolutely did not have to do. Like, it wasn't anything that the Pacers were doing that was making him miss shots. He was just missing shots. Kenny should understand, you got to let him shoot through it. It might have frustrated you at home, but that's what Phil Jackson does. Right? That's what the championship winning coaches do. It's like, hey, I'm not going to just abandon Tony Parker because he had 3 bad games in a series. That's not how it's going to work. Maybe you reduce his minutes, but bench him entirely? That's crazy. That was a horrific coaching move by Kenny Atkinson. I don't care if it was popular at the time. There are a lot of things that are popular at the time, horrible after the fact. This is one of those moves. It was an awful move, and it's probably going to be seen to have consequences down the line. Now, this is going to tank the Cavs season. They still have a chance to do whatever it is. I have made this point repeatedly. What's going to determine the Cavs' ability to win a championship this year is Evan Mobley. You can change some small pieces along the edges, and it might make it easier for Evan Mobley to help you win a championship. It might make it harder for Evan Mobley to help win you a championship. But at the end of the day, Evan Mobley is going to be the main story of why the Cavs win a championship, if they ever do. So I'm not going to say this takes the Cavs out their window. It makes them a team. It puts them in a tougher position. They got to find a way to replace the production off the bench that Ty Jerome provided, which was phenomenal. Again, at a 6-man award winner level. And like, yeah, you got DeAndre Hunter, who was also up there, but you don't have anybody who can really get their own shot. You got people who can help people get their own shot. And again, maybe the idea from Kenny Atkinson here is we're going to allow Evan Mobley to get the ball more with the second unit, and he's going to power the bench in a quasi kind of move where it's like, okay, Donovan and Darius handle the first unit, and then Evan handles that second unit with scoring, and maybe that gets you through the regular season. Maybe they go out and they get Russell Westbrook. There's a ton of ways you can replace it. But if you're mad about Ty Jerome not coming back to Cleveland, you can point at Kobe Altman, but there's a chance that Kobe had no real say in it. Well, not no real say. There's a chance that Kobe was not able to bring back Ty Jerome because Ty Jerome did not want to come back because Kenny Atkinson benched him. There's a good chance that that's the case. Or at least if Ty Jerome were to agree to come back, it would have to be for a deal that was significantly above market because you benched him in the final game of the season because the internet told you to. Like, that is going to be a move. I remember when I saw it, I thought to myself, damn, we just saw the last of Ty Jerome in Cleveland. That's why this news doesn't shock me. Because you benched the guy in game 5. Inherently, internally, that just shows a lack of trust in him. You know, you're basically confirming every fear in Ty Jerome's head that you think this shit is a fluke with Ty Jerome. That's why you were so willing to bench him, right? Like, other players who have established things would not get benched in that scenario. We can point out his stats all the live long day. But if instead of his name being Ty Jerome and his name was Russell Westbrook, he wouldn't have got benched. Because I've seen Russell play like that, right? The name value mattered, and you told yourself, hey, look, Ty Jerome, we think it's a fluke. We're going to bench him. It's over. The magic's over. Cinderella, her glass slipper fell off. It's over. And that move, in moves like it, have long affecting consequences. Now, it might be the case that this didn't spur Ty Jerome to not want to come back to Cleveland. You know, I don't know why we're talking about this as if the Cavs are the only ones who had say over the agency of Ty Jerome. There's a good chance Ty had some say over this as well. And once they found out Ty did not want to come back, they brought in Sam Merrill. We'll see if these moves work out. We'll see if these pivots work out. We'll see why it is that the Cavs were not able to bring back Ty Jerome. But all I know is that before the Pacers series, it seemed like everything was pointing up with the Ty Jerome staying in Cleveland. Everybody was saying good things about it happening. And then he got benched, and all of a sudden, every week you're hearing it's further and further apart. I mean, just basic common sense tells me you got to look at the benching and see if that, we got to at least ask the question if the benching affected anything. And I think that's the part of this whole conversation that's baffled me is nobody is asking that question. Everybody's just making the assumption that the Cavs were the ones who didn't want to bring back Ty. And that might be the case. There's a good chance it's the case. But the benching might have had an effect on this. And we should investigate that. We should investigate that. This is why I'm not a big fan of benching core players in very situational moments, right? Every time somebody's going through a shooting split, there's a knee-jerk reaction guy in the comments that wants to bench everybody. This is why I don't like doing that. Because if you don't show trust in their guys when they are struggling, they're going to remember that. Like, these are not computer programs on 2K or some shit like that. Like, you could bench somebody on 2K, they're not going to remember that you did that shit. These are human beings, though. Like, they're going to remember getting benched. Every athlete who's played any level of sports remembers every single time they got benched. Even if you weren't good at the sport, which most of us watching weren't, you remember getting benched. And it was more than likely the case that you deserved to get benched. And you still remember that shit. And we're just acting like him getting benched in the biggest game of the season. We're going to act like that's not a factor in this? We're not even going to question whether there's a role being played in here? I don't know. I feel like I want to know more about if that played a role in this whole thing. Because if it did, then Kenny it's the worst decision he made in the playoffs on top of a lot of bad decisions he made in that series. But that's a abysmal coaching decision there by Kenny. If that is actually what led to them not being able to keep Ty. If they actually wanted to give Ty the Sam Merrill contract, couldn't give him the Sam Merrill contract because he didn't want it because you benched him. And I think Ty's well within his rights to feel that way, by the way. Yeah, if I got benched like that and the team came back talking about we're going to offer you a market value deal, you get the fuck out of my face. Like, what? You embarrassed me on the biggest stage that we had all season, and you think I'm going to come crawling back for some money I can get at fucking Memphis, who's going to play me more and not bench me in Game 5 of the playoffs? Go fuck yourself. That's what I would tell the Cavs. So, like, this is what most athletes would tell the Cavs in that situation, by the way. This is why you got to think more about if you're going to bench somebody than just, shit, they had a couple bad shooting nights. This is why you got to think more about it, in my opinion. There's a human nature side of this. And the most disappointing thing about that to me was Kenny Atkinson. This is his bag, is human relationships, I feel like. I felt like that's what he helped and did the best. And for him to fail at that in that moment is concerning. We'll see what happened, but that's my 2 cents on it. I think that had a factor. I don't know if it did. I'm just speculating. I'm not working off of sources. I'm not reporting that this was the thing. I'm just saying when I look at it from a human point of view, when I think about it from Ty Jerome's side, I ask the question a lot of why the fuck would I want to come back to Cleveland after they did that to me? That's where I naturally line up. And that's why I thought we weren't going to be able to bring him back. We'll see what happens. We'll see if he ever talks about it. But I can't help but think that played a role. You let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.